Lake Guatavita, Colombia. Believed to be the site of an ancient meteor crater, this circular-shaped mountain lake is at the center of one of mankind's greatest searches. The search for El Dorado, the lost city of gold. Since the 16th century, El Dorado has been the holy grail for fortune hunters. Legends abound about a place full of untold riches somewhere in South America. Yet to this day, the mythical city remains undiscovered. But if such a magnificent place does exist, how has it eluded explorers for centuries? Some believe the answer lies within this mysterious lake.
The story of El Dorado developed from the Lake Guatavita that was within the territory of the Muisca, or the Chibcha people, which was a chiefdom, not quite as high civilization as the Incas or as the Aztecs, but a chiefdom with civilization itself that had a lot of gold.
The ruler in the southern half of the Muisca territory was known as the Zipa, but the conquistadors who arrived there in the 16th century called him El Dorado, Spanish for the Golden One. They gave him this name after observing the Muisca's most sacred ritual. The Zipa would float out on a royal barge to the middle of Lake Guatavita to make offerings of gold to a god believed to live at the bottom of the lake.
It was said that the chief, adorned with resin and then adorned with gold dust, would jump into the water in order to wash the gold dust off, and that this gold would accumulate in that lake, and that golden objects as sacrifices would be thrown into that particular lake. And from that came the belief of El Dorado around Colombia.
In 1912, an excavation of Lake Guatavita was led by British engineer Hartley Knowles. Knowles reported that he had recovered around $20,000 worth of treasure, including golden artifacts. But he also believed much more lay beneath the hardened lake bed. Could Knowles' find be evidence that the story of the Muisca chief is based on truth? If so, just who or what was the so-called god who dwelled at the bottom of the lake?
A number of researchers have suggested that ancient aliens have come to Earth primarily to mine gold. Zecharia Sitchin suggested that these extraterrestrials needed gold to suspend in their atmosphere and preserve their planet.
Is gold something that's really important to space exploration and to astronomy? Well, it actually is very important, and the reason why is because gold is an inert material. It doesn't react with anything. The other thing that's very important about it is that it is a wonderful conductor of electricity. And last but not least is the fact that gold is a perfect reflector of infrared energy. You can use gold blankets to protect spacecraft against the intense heat of a star or any sort of heat source.
Kanab, Utah. Located on the western Colorado Plateau, this town of less than 4,000 is the site of a treasure hunt that's been going on for over a century. And what many believe is hidden here among the red rocks and canyons is one of the greatest lost treasures in the world.
Something's buried here that's very valuable, that cost people their lives. People have died over this. This ain't no fun and games. This is for real.
If you've ever seen Indiana Jones or National Treasure, that's fictional, but the treasure that we're looking after is real. And that's what all of those movies were based off of, is the truth and history of the ancients. 20 years of investigation and research has us convinced that Montezuma's treasure is here in Utah.
Montezuma's treasure? In the American Southwest? Why would the lost treasure of a culture that existed in Mexico hundreds of years ago lie hidden in Utah? According to legend, the ancestral birthplace of the Aztec people is, in fact, somewhere in this area of the United States.
The Aztec mythology says that they came from a land called Aztlan. And this is a city that was apparently in what's now the American Southwest. Very, very advanced civilization.
In the Aztec stories, their homeland of Aztlan was created through an extraordinary event. An event that, according to ancient astronaut theorists, depicts an encounter with extraterrestrial beings.
The Aztec chronicler Geronimo de Mendieta recorded a very interesting creation myth in which a goddess threw a giant flint knife from the heavens into the 7 caves of Chicomostoc, causing the birth of 1,600 gods. Now imagine for a moment that you know nothing about high tech. You'll use words with which to best describe what you see. And all of a sudden, you have these giant flint knives descending from the sky.
So what are we really looking at here? Could it have been that these 1,600 settlers were in fact extraterrestrials who had crash landed on Earth and then brought their civilization to the indigenous people of that time?
According to Aztec codices, their ancestors were instructed by the gods to migrate south to Mexico around 1064 AD. Over the course of the next 500 years, they grew to be the greatest empire in North America. But on June 29, 1520, King Montezuma II was killed during the Spanish conquest of Mexico, and the Aztec Empire came to an end. What happened in the aftermath is debated by historians. But according to some accounts, the Aztecs gathered as much of their valuables as they could carry and fled to the north.
This treasure was spectacular. It was epic. It was hundreds of pounds of gold and silver and priceless objects. A golden disc the size of a cartwheel that was shaped like the sun. They needed to get this treasure out to a safe place. And this is the story behind the Aztec exodus, north in what we now know as the American Southwest.
The Aztecs are said to have carried tens of thousands of pounds of gold, silver, and priceless relics north in the direction of their ancestral homeland. But why? Why would the Aztecs travel nearly 2,000 miles, putting both their lives and their treasure at risk, to reach a homeland that they had left over 500 years earlier? According to their own stories, the Aztecs' vast treasure was a gift for their most important god.
This wealth of the Aztecs was being held in safekeeping for their god, Quetzalcoatl. So it was a sacred treasure. Quetzalcoatl is said to have brought understandings of astronomy and astrology. He is really the father of the Aztec Empire. But we have to ask ourselves, is it possible that Quetzalcoatl was an historical figure and not just a mythological being?
Quetzalcoatl is represented as a feathered serpent, but also he's a big being with the helmet, and he's sitting on a half-open sort of egg. Quetzalcoatl was definitely an extraterrestrial.
If Quetzalcoatl really was an alien being, as ancient astronaut theorists suggest, Could this be further proof of Zecharia Sitchin's theory that gold is an important commodity to extraterrestrial space travelers? And might the Aztecs have brought their treasure back to their ancestral homeland in the hopes that Quetzalcoatl would exact vengeance on their enemies?
The purpose of this treasure was to preserve it as tribute for Quetzalcoatl when he returned and helped them hopefully eventually vanquish their enemies. What's really interesting is that as you get into the American Southwest, what you find is that there are Aztec writings, Aztec hieroglyphs and petroglyphs on rocks even as far north as Utah. Perhaps somewhere they actually do have these treasures still stored away, still waiting for the day when Quetzalcoatl returns.
(1936), the Giza Plateau, Egypt. For more than 3,000 years, the body of the Great Sphinx had been buried beneath the sand. But after 11 years of work, Egyptian archaeologists uncovered the entire monument for the first time since antiquity. At 241 feet long and 66 feet high, it is the largest and oldest monolithic statue in the world. Even more incredible is its shape. The Sphinx has the head of a man and the body of a lion. Although Egyptologists date the construction of the Great Sphinx to the reign of the pharaoh Khafra in approximately 2500 BC, others claim its construction could be much, much older.
The Orthodox date of about 2500 BC tagged on these monuments has been challenged by a group of researchers, including myself, who have argued that the erosion on the Sphinx suggests a much, much older Sphinx.
Although Egyptologists have found no agreement as to when or why this strange monument was built, ancient astronaut theorists believe it may offer proof of extraterrestrials being present in ancient Egypt.
We see in many ancient Sumerian and Egyptian inscriptions of sphinxes, half man, half animal of some kind, and a variance to a degree of different combinations of animals and human beings. We have to wonder why would they be doing this, and logically it starts to make more sense when we realize a lot of these ancient texts explain that extraterrestrials came here and created us in their image and after their likeness.
If you believe the work of the late Zecharia Sitchin, where he believes that the Anunnaki came from a planet that is somewhere out in our solar system and that they came here to mine for gold, but they figured they're not going to do the work themselves, so they decided to take what creatures were on this planet at the time, genetically alter them, and make mankind.
And if that's the case, it's very possible that they could be using genetic alterations to experiment with not only just humanity, but a mixing of other species with humanity.
Could the Great Sphinx be evidence of genetic engineering by ancient aliens? And if, as Zecharia Sitchin proposed, extraterrestrials were genetically altering humans and animals for the purpose of mining gold, might this enormous structure have at one point been a repository for that gold? Is it possible that when Egyptian archaeologists began excavating the Great Sphinx, what they were really searching for was gold? Over the centuries, secret chambers, shafts, and elaborate tunnel systems have indeed been discovered all around the Giza Plateau.
A shaft was discovered called the Osirian shaft, which led under the Giza Plateau behind the Sphinx. Now in that shaft are various passageways that lead seemingly nowhere.
In recent years, ground-penetrating radar, or GPR scans, have been conducted which reveal evidence of numerous underground cavities located not only around the Sphinx, but underneath it as well.
From a scientific point of view, I'm not talking about speculation and theories and legends and so forth. That was the very first time that some strong indication that there might be these hidden tunnels and chambers under the Sphinx. And according to this, they found very, very strong evidence of what looked like artificial chambers.
It is not a question as to whether or not there is a secret underground passage underneath the Giza Plateau. The question is, can we get access to this? And of course, the all-important question is there something there of extraordinary value, maybe even something which defies science, which might even be of an extraterrestrial nature?
Kerala, India, 2011. Police officers with high-powered rifles stand guard at the entrance to the Sree Padmanabhaswamy temple, a sacred Vedic structure dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu. Under orders from the India Supreme Court, appointees unlock 5 secret vaults hidden beneath the temple that have been sealed for centuries. And door after door, they unearth giant caches of relics, together valued at nearly $22 billion. But when they reach the final chamber, Chamber B, it cannot be opened.
It has 3 doors on it. First one is a kind of a grating metal door. And the second has a heavy wood door. Finally was a strong iron door that is shut. It's stuck. Among the warnings in Chamber B are depictions of cobras, a terrifying image suggesting bad things will happen if you open this.
And then the last door has no locks, it has no any latches. According to legend, it was sealed with a mantra. It's called Ashtanaga Bandhana mantra, and no one knows what that mantra is.
There seems to be a bizarre curse around whatever is in this room. Anyone who tries to get into the room has all sorts of bad luck or even illness or fatalities.
But what is it that lies behind the door of Chamber B? Could it be simply monetary treasure? Or is it something more profound and dangerous? Indian texts, such as the Mahabharata, describe gods wielding ancient divine weapons and waging epic battles in the sky.
In the Mahabharata, there is a fierce battle that reads like modern-day science fiction with reference to unknown weapons and a single projectile charged with all the power in the universe. An iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced everything to ashes.
Is it possible that Chamber B is the hiding place for the kind of deadly technology described in the Vedic texts?
What's behind it is something special and dangerous. It's possible that what's inside of this unopened chamber is some kind of extraterrestrial technology that could change the world.
You're talking about extraterrestrial technology which is not meant to be found, it is not meant to be understood, and it is not meant to be utilized by man.
Could Vishnu's treasures, sealed behind the ironclad door of Chamber B, really be an ancient link to some devastating alien technology? And if so, might this mysterious treasure, like other so-called ancient lost treasures in Egypt, Greece, Jerusalem, or the American Southwest, be far more valuable, or perhaps dangerous, than mere monetary riches?
The buried treasure may not be the reason for our yearning or our searching. It might be the meaning of life. It might be the good life itself.
Life is so full of mysteries, and you have to open your eyes. There's so much to uncover here, so much treasure, and it's not just gold and silver, it's knowledge.
Man has always been fascinated with ancient treasures and discovering these treasures, the gold, the silver, the jewels. But in other cases, it can be technology of the extraterrestrial gods themselves.